Mormon Stories is a production of the Open Stories Foundation. Please become a monthly subscriber by visiting mormonstories.org. All contributions to Mormon Stories are completely tax deductible and go towards producing the podcast and building communities and programs of support for Mormons like you. Welcome back to part 2 or part 3, depending on how we cut it, of my interview with Lex de Azevedo. Lex, welcome back. It's been really exciting to hear about your early years growing up in both Hollywood and New Jersey, to hear about your mom and her career and your family growing up. What a exciting, well-connected family you grew up in. And it was also exciting to hear about your early years in the church and your mission service, and after coming back from the church, your early career with Capital. That's all good stuff. So thanks for sharing all that with us. And we end part 1 or 2, however we cut it, with you making this momentous decision to end your career at Capitol Records. It sounds like you feel like it was going to eat you alive spiritually and morally. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, very fair.
Yeah. And did you have any idea what you would do once you left?
No, that's what was interesting. It was a huge leap. I did have a little safety net, though. It was the King family. I was a member of the King family, and the King family was performing, and I would perform with them, and I would write music. It wasn't enough to really sustain the family, but it sure helped.
So you would write songs for your mom's
I would
group?
do the arrangements, the orchestral arrangements. So, and that went on until, I think, all through the 70s into the 80s, I believe. I don't remember when do you know, how old were you in those last specials, like Christmas?
Still the 70s.
Still the 70s. Julie was, it was very little in the Christmas special they did. That's why I was asking her. But
It was the early 70s.
Okay, so I did have that safety net. And then it became freelancing. But there was another reason I left Capitol. I began most of my life, I've tried to look at things from the big picture, eternal perspective. And I remember this thought came to me that what I do is important because I'm trading a day of my life for it. And I felt, I'm not saying this literally, but take it as you want. I was in the employ of Satan, and Satan pays well. In other words, I was paid to do things and produce music that would sell, largely at that time, was music that was opposed to the things I believed. And music had become the pulpit of the generation in the 70s. See, the baby boomers were coming through, and music was one of the most powerful. Didn't the Beatles who had said they thought they could swing an election? And John Lennon said at one point he's more popular than Christ, something like that.
Which was kind of accurate, right?
Which was kind of accurate, in that the power of music for this baby boomer. Now, I was actually a little bit ahead of the baby boomers, a year or two, but so the music had become aware of its ability to teach, to preach, to communicate. And I realized at some point, I'm a communicator. I'm not making records here. I'm communicating messages that have an impact on people's lives.
And this is the time the Beatles would have gotten really big and almost come and gone, Rolling Stones.
All of that stuff.
Woodstock would have been starting to emerge in the early 70s.
Yeah, Vietnam War, the whole thing.
Okay, so that's one of the most epic periods in American history, was the cultural phenomenon that was the late 60s, early 70s.
And you have to understand that to really understand my decision. It might have been different in another time, or even today, I don't know. But at that time, it was new. It was a revolution. We were in the middle of the sexual revolution. It was a cultural revolution, a music revolution, a political revolution. The whole country, it seemed like, kids were on campus, were demonstrating. There was the Kent shooting, where the police shot the students, it was a very volatile time, and I was in the middle of media, so everything resounded very loudly for me.
Yeah.
And I just felt, okay, I'm in a battle zone. I'm in a war. I got to choose which side, who I'm going to serve.
And we shouldn't forget to mention drug culture was starting to really emerge.
Drug was huge. I mean, there were people I was producing sessions, and people. I remember coming back. I said, "What's that?" They goes, "Oh, it's marijuana." I didn't know what they were using.
And but your your mom's family, your aunt's husbands were all heavily involved in this industry that you were at the same time deciding to not only walk away from, but to sort of condemn as being possibly damaging for our country's moral fiber, right?
No, not exactly.
complicated?
I was not contemplating walking away from the entertainment industry. I was walking away from being a producer when my job was to sell as many records as possible.
Okay, so you wanted to stay in the music industry.
Oh, yeah.
But not be with the record label.
Yeah. I actually wanted to score films.
Okay.
And
That's what you wanted to do in the early 70s?
I've wanted to score films for, even before that. There was something about composing, creating the music, not just arranging other people's songs, but actually creating it and scoring films that was very appealing. That's when I did my first, after I left Capitol, I think it was after I left Capitol, I did my first film for Where the Red Fern Grows.
Okay.
So I now went into a freelance mode, and I had young children. I think our first, let's see, Carrie would have been born in
She was born in 68.
68, okay. 68.
67, sorry, I was 68.
So you were born when?
68,
So Emily was born when?
70.
All right, so I had 3 kids at this point.
Okay.
And so I'm now working at home, freelancing, arranging, trying to get wherever I could get work and learning the ropes of freelancing in Hollywood. But an interesting thing happened. I met a man by the name of Ralph Carmichael because he was doing some of the arrangements for the King family. Ralph Carmichael was the grandfather or the father of Christian pop music today. He's the dude.
Like Amy Grant stuff?
He's the man that started it.
Okay.
And he started writing the music for, it was Billy Graham, and who was the other big evangelist? What's his name?
Jimmy Swaggart?
Keep
Oral
going.
Roberts?
Oral Roberts.
All right.
So Oral Roberts and Billy Graham, and he is the first Christian guru in music, Ralph Carmichael. I meet Ralph Carmichael, and we're both writing for, I can't remember, we did some things at Capitol, some things for the King family. And he says, Lex, I am so jammed, would you ghostwrite for me? And I needed the work, I'm leaving Capitol now. So I start ghostwriting, and so here I am, I am writing music for Billy Graham revivals and Oral Roberts. And so I start ghostwriting for Ralph Carmichael, and I've got these albums that are out on Light and Lexicon and Word. Word was the first big Christian label. And so I was making a living writing for whoever would pay me, but I thought it was interesting.
Lyrics and music or just music?
It was mostly arrangements,
Okay.
arrangements of Christian hymns and things,
Okay.
big revival things and orchestra and all that, and that helped support us. And so one day, Ralph Carmichael says, I have written a musical. Now this was a new thing, actually a Christian musical. And they didn't have the revivalists used music and big choirs and things like that and orchestras. And he says, I want you to come to the premiere of it. It's at Van Nuys Baptist Church. Tell me what you think. He knew I was a Mormon, and we never, certainly was not an issue at all. So I go to Van Nuys Baptist Church, and I see this rock group up on the pulpit of the cathedral there, and it's filled with kids, long-haired kids. And their guitars are screaming, and the drums are going, the bass is going, and there's all of these Christian-type songs, this early pop Christian. And at the end of it, it was called a natural high, getting high. This is a natural high, get high with Jesus. So I'm watching this, and I'm thinking, look at all these kids coming to Jesus after this. how come we have nothing even close to this for our culture, the LDS culture? And I actually invited Doug Stewart to come with me. Doug Stewart had moved into our ward, and I'd heard that he was a writer.
He was your co-writer for Saturday's Word, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh. And so I said, Doug, I don't know, have you ever written anything musical? He said, no. I said, well, come with me tonight. Let's watch this. Come home and the wheels start cranking. I thought, I was consumed with the idea of starting an LDS record company. And I thought, I have learned so much in my life. At that time, there was no LDS, when I say LDS culture, there was no LDS pop music. It was the Tabernacle Choir, basically, is what it was. And then the big production, what was it? Sand in My Shoes. The church used to put on a big Pioneer production, that kind of thing. There was no individual, private cultural things, musical or otherwise, produced by Mormons.
Now let me pause you for just 1 second. In your biography, you mentioned things like Sonny and Cher, the Jackson 5, the Jackson.
Those all happened in 1974,
So would Saturday's Warrior
6.
had started prior to your work with those other things?
I started
Were they
writing
running
it.
in parallel?
They're kind of going in parallel.
Got it. Okay, so
Actually,
we're coming to that.
You're coming to that. I was writing Saturday. Remind me to tell you about writing Saturday's Warrior while I was doing the Sonny and Cher Comedy Hour.
Okay.
And I'm all my energy is going to Sonny and Cher, and I'm doing Saturday's Warrior with my left hand over this because I didn't think anybody would ever see it.
But the genesis was in the early 70s.
Yeah.
Now, why would you want to make a Mormon record company when there would have only been a few million Mormons on the planet? Like, how would you have thought there'd be money in that? Like,
I didn't know that there'd be money in it. I didn't, but it's something I wanted to do.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, how could there be money in it? I mean, there was no visible evidence there'd be money in it. And where would you sell the records? Deseret Book wouldn't carry my first records. They said, we're a bookstore.
Right.
We don't carry records.
Right.
So it was a vision I had. It was not...
But you're in LA with a bunch of young kids and you just left Capitol, so I'm sure money is on your mind, trying to make a living.
I do not, at the risk of sounding holier than thou, I have always trusted that God would deliver. Always. Ever since my mission. I believe that the metaphors about God delivering the Israel, like they are metaphors for our life. God delivers. That's what he does. He's a deliverer. And I have never feared. There has always been enough. There is enough. Always will be enough. And I trust, just as Moses told the Israelites as they're going to the promised land, and God says, if you will keep my statutes and my Sabbaths, your threshing will last until the next season. I will provide for you. I'll give you rain. Because they needed rain. They were in the hill country. Without rain, nothing. And so he made that promise, and it's in the Book of Mormon, and it's in Jesus said, seek ye first the kingdom of God. I have always believed that at my core and lived my life from that outward. So there's times I feared, obviously, when I was young, but I always believed that God would deliver. So anyway, I'm working in Hollywood too. I was doing film. I started to do films. Still doing record arranging for people.
And I interrupted. So you had this idea of Saturday's Warrior coming off of this Christian musical that you've seen.
So
right?
there's a lot of things going on. When you're freelancing, it's like this, because if you turn something down, you don't know if you're going to have work tomorrow.
Right.
And I had these, 3 little mouths, chirping mouths, the feed and all this, and I've always, always responsible since my dad died. I told my mother, I'll quit school. I'm going to go to work and take care of the family, and so it's kind of been, that's what I do, and take care of people and solve problems. And so I got this idea. I want to start an LDS record company, and I had a vision of it, and then I thought I'll start it with this musical. So Doug and I went to work, and it was just on faith. I didn't know Doug. I figured nobody listens to the words anyway, so I'm doing the music. Let him do what he wants.
So he wrote the lyrics to Saturday's Warrior?
Yeah.
Okay, so all that theology that comes into Saturday's Warrior that really heavily influences Mormonism, that didn't really come from you.
Well, it was certainly discussed. It was certainly mutually understood. And there were some suggestions I made and changes that I made. Doug sees life and the church quite differently than I do. We are way apart. But nevertheless, we came together on this collaboration.
But he wrote the characters and the plot.
Yes,
He developed all
generally he
that.
did, but there was a collaboration.
And you wrote the music.
Yeah. Mhm. And
So you're Elton John, he's Bernie Taupin, basically.
you might say that. But I wrote a lot of the lyrics too, rewrote them. Because Doug
so-
had never written a song. So he put ideas down and then I would create words. All right, so we're working on this thing and we're working over a couple of years. And so I get, things are not going well. I can't remember what happened, but we're having a hard time. And we had a lovely home in Northridge, California. We actually thought we might have to sell it. And I decide that I'm going to do everything in my power to reach out to everybody I know and everybody they know to get work before I end up teaching or something. I didn't know what it's going to be. Because we just weren't making enough at that time. And there'd been a strike in Hollywood. That was another thing. There was a strike. And so work was shut down. So I call a friend, and he's an inactive Latter-day Saint, lovely man, Earl Brown. Turns out Earl is writing original material for Alan Bly, these Jewish producers from Canada. And they've been produced, I think they produced Laugh-In, they produced all these shows, and they're now producing this Sonny and Cher show, taking Cher and turning her into this gorgeous, classic, 1940s woman and getting her out of her fur. Remember the early Sonny and Cher?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And create her, and just completely repackage her.
They started as just like a pop duo, right? But it sort of swept into American consciousness as this variety show phenomenon that started with Lawrence Welk and whoever, right? Like talk.
You're not following. I'm not following.
So there's a whole new generation that has no idea what the Sonny and Cher show was.
Right.
Or the Donnie Marie show, frankly.
Right.
But I grew up watching that. You grew up producing that. So maybe set the stage for kind of what that era was and how it kind of came to be.
Yeah, it's kind of hard. I'm trying to think out of context. People have no context for that.
Right.
When you say set the stage, I'm not sure what you mean.
So variety shows.
Variety shows tended to be different than the record business. The record business, it was like rap music today is different than the music business. What I was doing in the rock and roll business was cutting edge. It was gritty stuff. Think of the Doors. I remember Jim Morrison. I remember meeting Jim Morrison. Walks off the elevator in Capitol Records in our 11th floor where we were in his leathers, and look, I can't remember. I think what year it was. He was looking for a record deal, but there was that element in the music, and that's what I wanted to get out of. Meanwhile, you had the King family, you had Lawrence Welk, and eventually you had the Osmonds, and you had what we call live TV, variety shows were for middle class America. It was a whole different thing. And then you had this new religious pop thing springing up, which eventually became huge. So where were we? Where were we going?
So Sonny and Cher.
Oh, Sonny and Cher. So I said, Earl, you don't know me, but my name is Lex de Azevedo, and I'm looking for a job. I'm a real good arranger, and I'm a good conductor. I can do anything. And he says, oh, you're the son of Alice King, one of the King sisters, aren't you? He says, oh, I love your mother's music. Let me talk to the producers and see if there's an opening. So he calls me back. He says, come on down. I've set up an interview with Alan Bly, producer of the shows. And I'm trying to think of the other shows he had done. I don't know if he did Laugh-In. He was actually, I think, a writer on Laugh-In, which was a hugely politically, you remember they were attacking Nixon. This is a whole. You didn't attack the president of the United States in those days.
Was that Smothers Brothers?
It was the Smothers Brothers. That's right. Yeah, there were writers on that show. So and they actually, I think they got kicked off the air, didn't they? Yeah. So anyway, these guys are real tough businessmen, but very creative producers. And they had this idea to take Cher and make her this gorgeous classic 1940s singer. All right, so they test me out with some arrangements. I say, oh, well, that was good, and you're fast, blah, blah, blah. So I ended up on the show, writing for the show. and working in the rehearsal hall, because I play piano. A lot of the arrangers don't play piano, and so I'd work with Cher, and I work with Sonny, and pick keys with them, help come up with arrangements, and things like this. And the guy by the name of Jimmy Dale was the actual music director. He was a Canadian too. And so that's how I got in there.
And that seems a lot more creative than trying to find, record stars. You're actually
I was loving
arranging, performing, collaborating.
But it's still hard because now I'm in a different type of environment. I am in the rehearsal hall with people that, everybody knew I was a Mormon. I don't know, they just knew. I mean, I don't know why, but everybody knew, and I was different. And it was interesting. One by one, I've never felt persecuted or set apart. And I've worked in some pretty sophisticated things. When I was doing the Sonny and Cher, we had everybody was on that show. Everybody, you name it, anybody who was in Hollywood came on that show, was a guest, and I worked with them. And did arrangements for them, and got to know them, and talked to them. And, but I felt different. I was different. My values were so different than, and it was hard for me to engage in the conversations because the conversations were based in a culture that was so different than where I was coming from. But anyway, I was able to do it successfully because I was working with music, and all they cared about was doing music. So I did that, and then Sonny and Cher got divorced, and they ended the show. An interesting thing happened after that. I was going to move to, all right, I'm trying to get this straight. Saturday's Warrior premiered while I'm doing the Sonny and Cher show, and I would stay up sometimes without sleep for several days every week to write the music, to get it ready for the pre-recording, like on Thursday. I would start writing on Tuesday. I'd write all Tuesday night. I'd go take a nap, and I'd write Wednesday and all Wednesday night, just to get the music ready. And I wrote volumes of music. I learned to write so fast. What originally took me, like 2 weeks to write, I could write in 2 hours. Just fly through it. So while I'm doing the Sonny and Cher show, and it's completely dominating my life, along with other things, I'm still doing a picture here and there. I'm doing commercials. One year I did 2,000 jingles.
2,000?
2,000 jingles, 93 KHJ, that kind of stuff, cranking them out day and night. And I turned down nothing. I became a workaholic. So where was I going? Oh, yes. Sonny and Cher gets canceled because they divorce. And no, the spring of before they got canceled, Saturday's Warrior gets premiered at BYU. Now, I thought we'd be lucky if Rick's College put it on once because there was no history of anything like this.
Okay, and did the album come out first?
No.
Okay, so you and this gentleman you co-collaborated with, Doug, you guys wrote the script, right? The dialogue, the characters.
Yeah, he did most of that part of it. Yes.
You wrote the music.
Right.
You guys collaborated, and you come up with, I guess, sheet music for the songs.
Well, not yet. So I'm telling you how this happened.
Okay.
While I'm writing Saturday's War, Doug moves to Orem.
Okay.
I'm still in LA. I'm writing Sonny and Cher show, and I'm writing Saturday's Warrior over here. Like on my left hand, I'm writing Saturday's Warrior, and I'm doing the Sonny and Cher over here, and I'm thinking, I don't know, my thinking was confused. I was making so much money as Sonny and Cher. I thought, a bird in the hand. I'm not going to give that up for something that I don't know if we'll be lucky if Rick's College puts it on once.
Right.
So I've often thought if I had paid more attention to the music of Saturday's Warrior, would it be better or worse? It was pretty simplistic, pretty flat.
Mm-hmm. I'm surprised you did it at all. Once you're working with one of the top TV shows in the world.
But you have to understand what drives me. I've never been driven by. I love money. Okay, I appreciate money and what it can buy, but it is not actually money that drives me. I found it easy to make money, but I've always been driven by something better than money. And various times I've walked away from things because of a cause. I am driven by a cause.
What was the cause of Saturday's Warrior? Why
They
did
just
they
didn't-
need? Why did they need a musical?
Right. Why did they need? Because I saw that I saw the impact that music had on the young people of the country, and at that time I used to say the clique of Latter-day Saints turning off radio and television, and condemning the music. The clique was deafening. The dialect, which eventually led me to write the book, but that it was subversive in the minds of the Latter-day Saints. It was anti what we believe as Latter-day Saints. I thought, well, if it's so powerful, let me try my hand at doing something that can be supportive of the culture. And what Saturday's Warrior was something that was supportive.
So let me restate. So your involvement with Capitol Records and with Sonny Cher in the entertainment industry, you loved it, but you felt like maybe it was having a toxic impact on our culture, and that it ran counter to the mores and the values of Mormon culture.
That I believed.
That you believed in.
Right.
And you're watching the Vietnam protests and Woodstock and the late 60s, early 70s, Beatles, Rolling Stones, drug culture, immorality. Are you like panicking that either our American culture or our church in specific is sort of careening in the wrong direction?
No, but I was protective. I was a young father. And if you think back, when you start on that road and you have little children, and you're very concerned. You're concerned about your culture. You're concerned about where you live and their future. And I have always, I don't know, I felt that I am more a missionary than a musician. I'm a communicator. I use music. And I wanted to give something that spoke to the LDS culture that had never happened. That's all it was. I didn't see any monetary benefit from that at all. So it turns out BYU in 1974, I think it is, heard about the Saturday's Warrior. Doug was actually, by this time, a writer at the BYU TV studio, or film studios up there. And he had mentioned it to somebody. And they think, hey, this could be cool.
Now you had put it on?
Never put it on. This is we're talking about a premiere now.
Okay.
It's just on paper at this point. It isn't even finished. The music isn't even finished.
Okay. It had never been performed at this
Never,
You're talking
never.
70-something? Not
74.
Okay.
Yeah, it was the year that Sonny and Cher finished.
Okay.
So
word gets around.
And the Festival of Mormon Arts decides to produce Saturday's Warrior. Now, Doug and I had lengthy conversations about what this show was to look like. And I assumed it was going to look like what I thought it was going to look like. But I was too busy writing, and I think that might have been the summer I started with the Jacksons, because the producers of Sonny and Cher went on to produce some shows with the Jacksons, 5.
Right.
And so, in all of this is taking all my attention, because like deadline, but my heart's really, over here.
Would you have met Michael Jackson and the Jackson 5?
Oh yeah. I used to sit at the rehearsal piano with Michael and he'd say, okay, Mormon, play. We used to kid each other. He was a Jehovah's Witness. I was a Mormon. And I used to do gospel things for him. I'd sit down and I'd play a song. And I said, hey, what you think you ought to do this way? And I'd take a song and I'd do a real gospel piano with it. And he'd say, whoa, you got soul, Mormon. You got soul.
I called you Mormon. What do you have any memories of him or his brothers that would stick out?
The memories I have of a really, really sweet boy and a very cruel father. It breaks my heart when I think about, I found out, I didn't personally witness it, but the people there, that the dad was giving him hormones, female hormones, to keep his voice from changing. He was the money of the Jackson 5, as history proved. He was the money. And the money was in that voice. And the fear was that if the voice changed, the money would go away. So, I mean...
His dad was giving him hormones.
Yeah. And that's what the word was, and I believe it. I mean, it came from sources really, really, really close to him and to the family and things like that. Yeah, I spent a lot of time in the rehearsal hall with him.
Super talented?
I think Michael Jackson, there's only one Michael Jackson. He's beyond, nobody compares to Michael Jackson. There's only one. And a tragic life. But he was so sweet, and he was very sweet to me. And yeah, it was a great experience.
We didn't mention Sonny Cher. Any reflections on
Well, that's a different story. So, I've never been treated so rudely in my life.
by Cher
Yes. I mean, it was just...
and Sonny?
Yes, yes. I mean, it was like... I mean, I learned a great lesson. I remember, and it wasn't that, it was the director too. The director, I was in the recording studio, we were in the recording, pre-recording the show. I got an orchestra, I'm conducting the orchestra, and the director's in the booth, and Sonny was there, and we had worked out this arrangement. And I had written the arrangement the way it was supposed to be, but Sonny was a musical cretin. I mean, he just didn't have any musical ability. And so he's in the booth trying to record the voice, and he's saying, "That's not what we did. That's totally wrong. That's in the wrong key." And I wanted to say, "Sonny, you're singing it in the wrong key. Sing it in the right key. It'll be fun." And then the director comes in front of all the musicians and everything. The director pushes the button, the talkback button, and he says, "That is the worst arrangement I have ever heard in my life. That's a piece of crap." And everybody's listening to this, and everybody's kind of embarrassed, mostly for him, because the musicians knew that the arrangement was okay. But it was just, the Sonny and Cher was, it was abusive to a lot of the people.
Very different.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so word gets around about Saturday's Warrior.
All right, so BYU is going to put it on. I am too busy to go to any of the rehearsals. And I'm really excited because Doug's telling me, they love it. This is going to be great. And I'm thinking, okay, good. I want to see it. So I fly up to this premiere. It was a couple days into it. And he's telling me, it is a hit. It gets standing ovation. I'm thinking, Doug, you can stand up and burp on stage or worse and get a standing ovation at BYU. I mean, standing ovation doesn't mean anything.
So somebody put on the full musical for the first time and you weren't involved.
I was too busy working. So I go up halfway through there and the show starts and I am appalled. I start to get sick. I have a violent reaction to my creative things. Not that I think they're very good, because I don't really think they're that good, but just I have a vision, and when it doesn't reach that vision, I have a very strong physical reaction, because I put a lot of energy into this thing for like 3 years. I can't believe what I'm saying. It's so bad. I had this idea of since we couldn't afford an orchestra, a choir, this massive sound coming from a choir, a big choir. Instead of a choir, I see 6 dancers flitting around on stage barefoot in tank tops and in jeans, singing "Who Are These Children?" I mean, oh no, get me out of here! And so when the show was over, and Doug was saying, isn't that great? And I said, Doug, this show's dead. I never want to see this again, ever. It's dead.
Wow.
And he said, what? What's the matter with you? We have a hit on it. I said, Doug, this show is dead. This is an embarrassment. And so I go home and just thinking.
It's very dramatic.
Yeah. I mean, no, that's what I said. And that's how I felt, It was such a disappointment. And seeing that completely clouded my vision. I hoped it was going to be something else, but I didn't know for sure that it could be something else. We go home that summer. Sonny Cher's canceled. We decide to move to Utah. We'd been through a meat shortage, a gasoline crisis. We had to evacuate our home because of the earthquake and the Van Norman Dam. All I said, okay, California's going to hell. We're out of here. We're going to go to Utah. I didn't know what I was going to do in Utah, but we were going to go. Sold our house. At this time, before we were going to leave in August, the Chatsworth Stake we were in says, we want to put on a summer musical, and we heard you've written this, that Saturday's Warrior was a huge hit. I said, no, Saturday's Warrior's dead. It's horrible. We're not going to do that. And they said, well, why? What's wrong? I said, it just doesn't work. I thought it was going to work. And they said, well, why doesn't it work? I said, well, it was supposed to be this, and it was supposed to be this, and it was supposed to be this. And I said, well, what if we do it that way? Well, I said, you're a stake. How can you do it that way? You don't have the resources to do it. No, we'll do it. We'll do it. So the Young Women's president was a woman by the name of Ruth Latimer. They prevail upon me to put this on. So rehearsals start.
In California?
In California. And they said, will you cast it? I said, yeah, I'll cast it. I called my brother to play Jimmy, my younger half brother. I called my other brother to play Todd. I call my aunt to play the matron. I call Carl Ingham, who had hired me at Capitol, he and his wife, to play the parents. Their daughter, Sean Ingham, married to Sean King now, to play the role of Pam. She's like 13. And Mac and his gang is Paul Ingham. I just cast it from the members of our ward, basically, so anyway, rehearsals start, and I'm just working with them. We have a nice big choir, an 80-voice choir. Marianne Mendenhall is going to conduct it, and she's really good. I knew she'd do a good job with it. So we're out of our home now, and we're going to move to Utah, but I'm staying at my mother's for a few days because we wanted to see the opening of Saturday's Warrior. We have a dress rehearsal at Sherman Oaks Ward. The first time, it all come together, and the choir is there, and the choir starts singing, Who Are These Children Coming Down? And it's like, it's electric. This massive choir, and everybody in the cultural hall is like, and I'm watching the first time, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, there's something happening here. Well, the rest was history. The Chatsworth Stake put it on, and they couldn't stop it.
What year would this have been?
Summer of 74, okay. I believe. So, in the midst of moving, they couldn't stop it, and finally the stake president calls me and says, Lex, we're not in show business. I'm running a stake here. We got to stop this. But people are saying, no, we want to bring people from Bakersfield. We're bringing people from San Diego. Mission presidents, we're bringing the whole mission, and people are coming in. And I'm watching this thing, and I'm thinking, I had no idea. I had a vision, I had a dream, but I had no idea. And so, all right, what's converging now? We're ready to move. We buy a house in Linden, Utah, an A-frame on Locust Avenue. It's still there. We're going to move to Locust Avenue. We move up there. Alan Bly, the producer of Sonny and Cher and of Jackson and things like that, he calls me and says, look, we're doing a new show with Sonny Bono. I said, you're kidding. You're kidding me. We're doing a show with Sonny Bono. And we want you to come back and meet music director. And I said, Alan, I moved to Utah. And he calls me back a few days later and offers me more money. I said, wait, Alan, I'm living in Utah. I'm not going to work. He says, why do you want me? Anyway, because you can get so-and-so, you can get so-and-so. I'm still young and new in the business. And then I learned a great lesson. He said, I want you because I can trust you. And I said, what does that mean? Does it mean not my music? He said, we counted all of the bills, the arranger's bills, which you were working on, and what we do, we get paid by page. We'd write a score page of music. It has all the instruments on it, one big page. You write the trumpet, trombone, saxophone, strings, blah, blah, on one page. Then the next, that's 4 bars, then another 4 bars on that page. And hand to the copyist, and the copyist copies it. We get paid per page of music. I never wanted to turn in my own bill because I didn't ever want to be in a situation of making a mistake. So I used to let the copyist turn in my bill. Well, he decides to go through the bills of all the arrangers. And he said, you were the only one that was honest. I was just dumbfounded. I had no idea. So anyway, he called me, so instead of moving to Utah, we moved back into a rented home in California for me to finish the show, which was short-lived, Sonny Bono. Seriously? So we were there for one season, and then Saturday's Warrior has to come. The stake president calls us. I can't do this. It's got to stop. And people are calling me. They're calling me from all over the country. We want to see the show. So we decide. We had sold our home, and we had some money. One of the toughest decisions I ever had to make in my life was to charge admission for Saturday's Warrior. I felt, this isn't right. I cannot do this. This was a work of love. This was a labor to build the kingdom of God. I cannot charge admission. But I was in between a rock and a hard place. We had to build sets. We needed a truck to travel those sets. We needed to do advertising. We needed to pay the cast. We needed a sound system. We needed about $100,000 in order, now that the stake was going to stop it. So the young women's president, Ruth Latimer, came to work. We started Embryo Music, the very beginning of it. And she was with me for 25 years, my right arm for 25 years as we built Embryo Music. It's history. Saturday's Warrior is now history, what happened with it. We never did get to Utah. Stayed in Los Angeles. I was called to be bishop shortly after this. And there's a very interesting story on that, too. I don't know if you want to go there now or want to keep on. Saturday's Warrior. Do you want?
So
everybody
Embryo
has some
Music-
doctrinal questions on Saturday's Warrior, and I love these questions. I love these questions. Go ahead.
No, we'll get to those later. Embryo Music. So the first album of Embryo Music was the Saturday's Warrior
Yeah.
album.
Yeah.
And it sold what?
Saturday's Warrior is a gold record that has never been in a record store.
So I mean, it sold over 100,000 copies.
Oh yeah. Well, $1 million.
What's gold? What's gold?
Well, I think
Units.
$1 million. I think.
Okay.
Now.
So Saturday's Warrior grossed over $1 million in revenue in the album.
Many times over $1 million. The whole thing. It was hard. I don't know for sure because we kind of packaged it, together with the shows, and we used the album to help fund traveling of the shows and things like that. But Saturday's Warrior I had no idea. I couldn't possibly have known.
Do you have a sense for how many albums sold? 100,000?
Hundreds of thousands.
Hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, then it became. It's been on CD. It's been on 8-track. It's been on cassette. It's been on. And my biggest problem was that Deseret Book wouldn't carry it. No, we sell books.
Eventually they did.
Oh yeah, they did.
But at first you're saying they wouldn't.
They wouldn't carry it.
For how long?
Until people screamed at them and yelled at them. How come we want Saturday's Warrior? We want Saturday's Warrior.
So you generated millions of dollars of revenue from the Saturday's Warrior album.
I don't know. I don't know if it's millions from the album, but with the music, the printed music, and the album, and the show, millions.
Oh, wow. Okay, great.
Millions.
With a Mormon audience.
Yeah.
Are you saying
Charging $4 and $6
for what?
admission sometimes
To the musicals.
to the show. Yeah.
So did you have a licensing arrangement? So it was put on in my stake in Houston growing up, a Houston, Texas stake. Mm-hmm. Keith and Lisa Brown, who became the parents of the 5 Browns, they performed in the Houston production of Saturday's Warrior. I was Ernie.
Yeah.
Okay. Lisa was Julie. I believe Keith. What's the paper?
Dreams.
Yeah. What's the character? Todd.
Todd. Yeah.
I believe Keith played Todd. So would we have paid some fee, or would you have gotten some percentage of receipts?
I didn't do that. Doug eventually handled that. Doug has kind of managed for his whole life, managed Saturday's Warrior. I'm the kind of person, once I saw it, great, I want to move on.
Okay.
I don't want to see it again.
But you set up the business for it.
I set up the business, and Ruth, the touring business, that I can show. Now, when just so you understand, when I say millions of dollars, there's also huge costs.
Sure.
Huge costs.
Oh,
We're talking about gross. And I took that money and built Embryo Music with it, because Embryo wasn't. We then did. We were the first ones to do. I did with London Symphony Orchestra. We did hymn albums. We did all kinds of things, and I took
All Mormon themed, or
all. Embryo was entirely an LDS, the first LDS music company.
Okay, and who were some of the talent? Were the Osmonds on Embryo?
No, the Osmonds. You wouldn't call the Osmonds LDS artists. They are like, I don't call the King family LDS artists. They're artists, but they don't focus on the LDS community.
Okay.
These were people like Kenneth Cope. Eventually, there were some earlier ones we had. A lot of instrumental stuff at first. I did My Turn on Earth. It was very successful, which was her mother.
Carolyn Pearson.
Yeah, we wrote that.
You did the music, she did the lyrics?
Mm-hmm.
Is that kind of how
Yeah.
that was? When you say a touring company, really quick, so you would send out a cast, the original cast, to perform all throughout the country in local steakhouses?
No, we did not perform steakhouses because we charged admission.
So you performed where?
In the biggest halls in Phoenix, Seattle, San Francisco, San Diego, Los Angeles. I have to tell you a funny
Would
story.
you fill them?
Oh, are you kidding?
With Mormons?
Yes. No, I was surprised. No one was more surprised than me. So we booked the Phoenix, I think it was called the Phoenix Plaza. It's like a 3,000 seat theater. And we booked it for a Friday night. Thursday night, Friday night, a Saturday matinee, Saturday night, and a Monday night performance. 3, 6 night, 12,000 people.
Wow.
So we're booking and Ruth Latimer, who was the young women's president when the stake first did it, she was booking it, and she's telling me this. She says, Lex, they don't want to give it to us. They said it'll be a disaster. We won't make any money, and we won't be able to pay the hall. And what should I do? I said, well, you guarantee him the money. How are we going to guarantee them? Just guarantee them the money. Give them the money. Guarantee them the money. Whatever they need. Pay half of it, whatever they want. They call us back. Tickets go on sale. And they call us back and they say, okay, what's going on here? We've sold more tickets in 3 days to Saturday's Warrior than we have done in 3 weeks for Elton John.
Wow.
And that's the way it was. We must have done, and then there's 2 casts. There was one going in Utah. And it...
was the original cast the same people who sang on the album?
Yes.
So they became the original touring cast as well.
Yeah.
And they toured.
The album was a demo. See, I didn't ever think it would go anywhere. So as a cast memento, we got the cast together and I played organ. All it is, if you listen to the original soundtrack, it is just a drum, a bass, and an organ, and a piano. And I played the piano and the choir and the cast. We went and did this thing for the cast. Well, it ended up being this huge, huge hit.
Right. Yeah, huge.
And it changed. What it did is it launched an interest, for better or for worse, in LDS cultural events. I mean, put on by individuals, not just by the church, not just by stakes and things like that.
Like what?
Oh, there was a number of musicals came out. Janice Cap Perry wrote a musical. Several other people wrote musicals. People started writing pop songs. There were no pop songs. The very first pop songs were Saturday's Warrior.
So it sort of spawned an industry of Mormon pop entertainment.
And the doctrinal questions, I love these. I love these discussions about the doctrinal questions of Saturday's Warrior. Okay, dude, Saturday's Warrior is fiction. Okay? It is not a sacrament meeting talk. It is it's a theatrical piece. We never intended to preach the gospel of Saturday's Warrior. So the first thing that comes up is, well, did we choose our spouses in heaven? That comes up all the time. And people have sent me letters that, did you know that Elder McConkie spoke to the co-eds at BYU and told them not to wait around for their preordained spouses? And did you know that President Kimball said this and blah, 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 blah. And I said, you're right. I got a file cabinet with hundreds of letters whose patriarchal blessings said that they chose their mate in the pre-existence. So I think I have 3 categories. There's things that are doctrinal. There's things that are they're not doctrinal. And there's things that are just undoctrinal. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. There's just a lot of stuff that's just undoctrinal. Doesn't matter.
But in some sense, that shaped generations of Mormon thought.
Do you know, to this day, people will come up and give me gifts when they find out who I am, and they say, my name is Emily. My name is Julie. We sang Circle of Our Love at our wedding. And they give me presents. And they said, if I'd ever meet you, it was very embarrassing. Last Sunday, we were in church in St. George. And this lovely lady, probably 40, she's got 3 little kids, and she's from Vegas. We're coming out of gospel doctrine class, and she comes, throws her arm around me. She says, I love you. I love you. And my wife's standing right there. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, please. I said, and she said, you saved my life. You saved my life. And I said, I'm honored. Thank you very much. I mean, I always acknowledge that, but I wonder, I don't get it. I don't understand it, a lot of it.
You don't understand it?
Yeah, a lot of it.
So like my mom, Margie, I was talking to Margie, my wife, before I came over here. Margie's parents joined the church in 1978 as converts. Her dad went to Yale Medical School. He was an atheist. Her mom was a Catholic, a lapsed Catholic from Vermont. They joined the church in 78. Having been zero population people. So they'd had 2 kids, Margie's older brother and Margie. They were done because they weren't going to have more than 2 kids because zero population.
Right.
And they're, people...
That was bigger then. People don't understand. It's not big now, but it was big then.
It was, yeah. And so once they joined the church, however, Margie's dad is immediately cast in the production of Saturday's Warrior in Washington, D.C., Potomac. He plays Mac, right? They become so inspired by the musical that they decide to have 4 more children.
I've heard the story Hundreds.
After
of
they
times.
had
Hundreds of times.
After they had stopped at 2, Margie's mom's in her 30s. She
know.
has 4 more children. Catherine, my wife's younger sister, the poem that she was given sort of to celebrate the birth was, "Who are these children coming down?" Right? That was, and these 4 children would not exist if they hadn't joined the church and if they hadn't have been involved in Saturday's Warrior. And I mean, I am sure there are tens, if not hundreds of thousands of stories like this.
I've had, last year, what was it, last year or the year before, I'm over at Deseret Book, and I'm checking out, and they mention my name. I get a discount, Deseret Book. And this guy follows me out of the store, and he said, "Excuse me, can I talk to you?" He said, "I have invented this snorkel that is an amazing snorkel, and I have it on the back of my car, and can I give it to you?" And I'm thinking, sure, I snorkel. and he's still, I mean, it's so sweet. I mean, it's such a genuine outpouring of love and gratitude. And when I say I don't mean rude, I don't get it. I mean, in a way, I do get it. But I can't say that to anybody in my life that you have affected your music or your book. I've read great books that I love, but I'm just humbled, and the only thing it's something much bigger than me. It's not me. I tried to do it again. I couldn't do it. I wrote 4 musicals that failed miserably.
Really? Since then?
Yeah. So I think, to me, it was, I believe it was the hand of God. I made up my mind that where I was going to go. I'm leaving this side. I'm no longer 1 foot in Babylon because it pays well, and 1 foot in the kingdom on Sundays. I made a choice, and I felt inspired to do it. And John, the desires of my heart, in spite of the torched landscape, the scorched landscape of my life, much of which is torched by myself, in spite of that, the desires of my heart have always been good, to do good. And I think the only way I can make sense of it is that the hand of God working while I was doing Sonny and Cher over here, but there was something I was doing. I remember playing for Julie. I played Julie. I remember which song it was. You were a little girl, and you were just sitting under the piano. Which song was it? I don't know if it was Sailing On or something like that. And you're sitting, and I think it was Sailing On. I started doing those cascading chords. And I remember feeling that there was something there, more than just a C major cascading triad. And I remember when the first time I heard those chords came to me, bing, bing, of Saturday's Warrior, I thought, where did this come from? I've never written those before. Where did that come from? And I believe in the power of revelation. I believe in the power of inspiration. I believe in the power of God in our lives. I absolutely do. And I have other experiences stronger than this, I mean, that I'll tell you about that in my life, that have shaped my life. In spite of my own sins, weaknesses, and inadequacies, I've come to learn that God grants us more according to the desires of our hearts. And when we desire things like this, that great things can happen.
What was the hunger that you filled? Do you even have a sense for it? Within Mormonism, why did people want and need Saturday's Warrior?
You had to be there. You said it. There was the zero population. There was the record industry blaring at you this garbage, and you felt like the world was against you. And since your kids now are baby boomers, the people who had, were growing up and bombarded with this, it was like, help me. Somebody help me. Give me some scaffolding for the kingdom. Give me some scaffolding for my family. And what I think we did with Saturday's Warrior and My Turn on Earth and Embryo Music at large, what I tried to do, was to give people scaffolding. Does that make sense?
Sure.
I have never considered, I do not think I am a great composer. I'm a good tunesmith, composer. And I'm not a fan of what I've done, but I know that when I have sought the power of God in my life, that I have been able to do things that I can't do on my own.
Can you talk just briefly about the characters in Saturday's Warrior and what they represent for you?
Okay, give me one.
What is Todd, right?
Todd.
What does Todd represent?
Well, first of all, the film today, to me, is the best representation of Saturday's Warrior.
The film that you released
A year ago. The film is, in the stage play, all right, what is the weakness, dramatic weakness of Saturday's Warrior? It is a melodrama. Giant, huge, you got this big cast, all these characters, you don't have time to develop anybody. You don't really know who Jimmy Flinders is. You don't even know why he's doing what he's doing. You don't even know Todd is. He's an artist in a park. You don't know his story. You don't know Mr. and Mrs. Flinders, because it was written as a concert. There was no sets. There was nothing. It's a concert. You walk out on stage and you sing, and the choir goes, and it was a concert with a storyline, like what we saw at Van Nuys Baptist Church. It was an overgrown concert.
Okay.
With characters and a storyline. In the film, I was able to create, to me, Saturday's Warrior. And who is Jimmy Flinders? And it's autobiographical too. Jimmy Flinders is Jim Morrison from a Mormon family. When you see the film, you'll see that. Who's the family? The family is like the King family. It's like the Osmonds. It's a musical LDS family. Let your light so shine, develop your talents, all of that. But this kid's really got it. And he becomes a star in his own right. And so the characters are developed. And so who's Mom and Dad Flinders? They're just like your average Mormon, the Browns. They're like, you know what I mean? There's so many in the church today like that. And what is the lesson of Saturday's Warrior? To me, the most powerful lesson, and is towards the end of the show, when Jimmy's sister Pam dies, and he's now a rock star. He's estranged from his family. You get that he's using drugs. He's involved in, you name it, a rock star life. His twin sister dies, and he comes home, and he looks like hell.
That's Pam, right?
Pam, she dies. And he comes back home, and his dad thinks he's back home. And the temptation was to wrap it up. He's home, and he's going to go on his mission. And you know what I mean? It's everything's wonderful. But he says, Dad thinks he's there to stay. He says, no, Dad, I got a gig tonight. He's got to go back to San Francisco, where he's going. And to me, the most wonderful thing is that Dad, it was all about, we got to go on a mission. You got to go on a mission. You mean you're going to go off with this band instead of going on a mission? And this conflict within the family, the pain that it caused. So many LDS families feel when a child chooses something other than A. Here's A, choose A. Why do I want to choose B? No, don't choose B, choose A. And so he comes back home. The dad thinks he's home, and he says, no, Dad, I got to go. And the dad starts thinking, he says, Jimmy, I want you to know something. No matter where you go, whatever you do, I will always love you. To me, that is the most important message in the show.
Did that come through in the first version?
No.
That's developed since then.
Yeah. In the film, I was able to flesh out the characters as I have always seen them.
I'm going to admit that I haven't seen it yet.
That's okay.
I didn't want to spoil my original.
Okay.
Is it worth seeing? Are you proud of the movie?
I wish I'd had another $1 million. There's nothing wrong with the film that another $1 million would not fix. But I think it works. To take Saturday's Warrior and make a film is a difficult thing, because it's a concert.
Right.
And I have resisted it for 40 years. People have thrown money, say, I'll fund it, please, make the film, I'll pay for it. I have resisted it because Saturday's Warrior to me was something sacred. I know where it came from.
How did the VCR tape get created that you've never seen? How did that happen?
That is a story which would be very unkind for me to go into in great detail. I will just tell you the bottom line. The bottom line was, I was forced and coerced into doing it, and that or a lawsuit, and I resolved I will never, never be involved in a lawsuit. where everybody loses, except
Yeah.
the lawyers.
Right.
Never. So I let it go. I watched, and I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, because I'm not saying the people in it, people.
You weren't, but it's okay to say you weren't involved. It
Yeah,
wasn't-
I wasn't, but I mean, I don't want to hurt feelings of people who are in it, because people love that. And today, people, that's Saturday's Warrior for most people, is that, the 1989 video. But you can't take a stage play and put a camera in front of it and call it a movie. You can't do that. Well, you can, they did. But it doesn't translate. You don't, if you want to make a play out of a book, you don't stand on the stage and read the book.
Right.
No, you make a play out of it. And that didn't happen. So I watched 5 minutes of it, and I was as disappointed as the first time I saw Saturday's Warrior. I turned it off, went threw up, never watched it again. I didn't throw up.
But later with the movie, you were able to implement more of your creative vision.
Once it became, and that was interesting, because I didn't know how to make a movie. And may I just say, it came to me how to make it one day after I had decided never to make it. My daughters, Rachel and Emily, were my partners here in the studio, said, "Dad, come on, let's make it, let's make it." And I said, no, I don't know how to make it.
So they were your partners in it?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
And so they're the ones that actually pushed me to make it.
Nice.
But I think it works. I mean, LDS films, because of the budget, are really more like TV movies of the week. They're not, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You just don't have the money. You don't have the resources.
Right, right.
So we did the best we could, and I thought that the crew was amazing. The cast is stellar. Everybody in that cast is amazing.
I want to talk about the songs, just a few of the songs. If I mention some of the songs, can you just talk about?
Sure.
All right. Circle of Our Love.
Okay, what would you like to know?
What comes to your mind? I'm going to just say some.
What comes to my mind? Comes to my mind is the tedious rhythm of the lyric. That's
not how it's sung.
What I'm saying is, when you write music, what you like to do is have, I love you. I love you, I love you. You know what I mean? It's all eighth notes. That's what bothers me when I listen to it. I'm not a huge fan of the song.
You're not allowed to say that.
Okay.
The circle of our love is more than just.
Thing here. No. All right. But does it work in the context? Yes. From a professional standpoint, there's so much. It could be so much better.
This is sacred. You're violating my sense of sacredness right now.
I am? I didn't know. No, I just.
Circle of our love, it goes.
Well, but
forever.
listen. However, in the film, you will hear it sung better. The film, we opened it up a little bit more. We expanded. We took more liberties. The film is better.
I feel violated.
I know. I shouldn't say this because people are going to hate me.
Pulling together.
Pulling together. Pulling together. Probably my least favorite song.
What'll they do if, right?
Yeah, my least favorite song on the show.
What'll I do? Courage take, for goodness sake.
I know the song.
When you're out of courage, ready to break.
You're not
we got our father and mother, sister and brother.
You're not convincing
pulling
me.
together. I'm not doing it for you?
No.
What?
No, it's not my favorite.
That's like families. It's like families
I know.
pulling
I
together.
know. It's not my favorite song on the show.
What is wrong with you? Humble Way.
Humble Way in the film is cool. Humble Way works really cool.
Who are the missionaries?
Can't remember their names.
Is Alex Boyer?
He's in it, but he's not one of the missionaries.
He's not one of the missionaries, okay.
He's the heavenly matron.
Okay. That's a twist.
Yeah.
Okay. We are not the ordinary.
In the film, it works really good. We've got a great gospel choir. I brought in it's called the, what's this, in Salt Lake. It's a great black choir. They came in and did it. And we turned it into a real kind of R&B, boom, 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 like a Motown, boom, 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 boom. And it really kicks. It works well in the film.
Sailing On.
Sailing On, I think, is one of the better songs. I actually love Sailing On. When we started recording it, and remember, I did it with just piano and organ and drums and a bass. But on the film, we did it with strings and it was soared and it was beautiful. We were sitting there, Emily and Rachel and I were listening to the first track, and we all teared up. We got really emotional.
What does the song mean to you?
Oh, I think it's one of the most beautiful lyrics. As you're being born, I mean, what is it? What's it like? What's down there for me? You know, I imagine there's a certain amount of trepidation, I can imagine, to come to this place. I think we had to know there was huge risks here. Huge risks.
Do you believe in that literal narrative that we were all spirit children?
Yes.
In the pre-existence, looking
Absolutely.
down on earth and...
Well, I don't know if we're looking down on earth, but I'll tell you something I absolutely know. That we are indestructible, eternal spirits. I absolutely know that. We are indestructible. There's nothing can hurt us. There is nothing for you or any of us to fear. Nothing. We're all going to die. That's the good news. So nobody's getting out of here alive. But we were born to die, and this is the school of the gods. I know that. My whole life is fashioned after that. That's why my whole understanding of the gospel, we are in the school of the gods. As man is, God once was. And as God is, man may become. That is one of the most beautiful teachings of the restoration. We get caught in all these other things. That's amazing. The impact of that. If that is true, do you know what that means? And the other one, if this is my work and my glory to bring to pass the immortality and eternal life of man. Do you get the impact of that? No other church teaches that. It's not anywhere else. If that is true, that is the greatest thing, one of the greatest things that have come out of the restoration. So one day I was pondering this. I was walking. The older I get, the more I talk with God, and I feel like Tevye in Fiddler on the Roof. People stop me and say, "Are you okay?" You know, I'm walking in, and I'm talking with God. And so I was pondering that one day. This is my work and my glory to bring to pass the immortality and eternal life of man. Okay, I get it. God's not a dentist during the week and a God on the weekends. This is a full-time gig. He's a creator. Then the next thought came to me is, well, God, if this is your work and glory to bring to pass the immortality, eternal life of man, how's that going for you? Because according to what I believe, it's not going that well. You must be really unhappy. I see a lot of people in my ward, just kids have supposedly left the church, and they're miserable. Their families, and they won't talk to them. And there's animosity within families. I said, but you, of all these children, and this is your work and your glory, and I look what's going on in the world. How many people have even known of Jesus Christ since the beginning of time? How many people have ever heard of the restoration? So how's it going for you? And I came to the following conclusion. He's either the most miserable of all creatures, or there is much that we do not know, that we do not understand, and that our lives have a purpose. And the courses we take during our life, I think, are important to learn. Life is not a pass, test, fail. Every day, pass, fail. I think it's this wonderful, marvelous learning experience on the road to godhood. And while we're on the subject, I'll get to the end game. The purpose of the school of the gods is the school of love. God is love. You can get 100% in attendance, 101. You can get 100% in home teaching, 102. You can get 100% in genealogy, 103. But it's graduate studies in love. That's why we're here. It's how we treat other people. That's the end game. And that's the purpose of life. And that's why our enemies are our friends. Isn't that what Jesus said? Bless those that curse you and despitefully use you. Because without enemies, how could we learn to love as God loves? It's easy to love those that think we're talented, that laugh at our jokes, that that are politically aligned with you. But it is those that disagree with us that teach us how to love as God loves. And I believe that He loves unconditionally. And that's what we're here to learn. That's the end game for me.
So for you, the theology behind Saturday's Warrior, you still kind of believe the core theology that God was once a man, that God became an exalted man, that
Absolutely.
we are God's in embryo.
Absolutely.
And that we have the option or the potential of becoming God someday.
Absolutely.
And that we existed as spirits before we came to this earth, conscious
that He organized them in matter.
With personalities.
Yeah.
And
there's so much we don't know.
But that foundational thing you do believe.
Absolutely. To me, that's the core. That's the most beautiful thing of all. as man is, God once was, and as God is, man may become. I know that through every part of my body.
Do you remember, this is a total sidetrack, but do you remember when the Godmakers book
Yeah.
and movie came out? Mm-hmm. And and Gordon B. Hinckley was interviewed on national television and asked about that couplet, and he sort of distanced himself from it.
Which couplet?
That as man is, God once was, and as God and man may become. And he basically said, I don't know that we teach it, I don't know that we emphasize it, right?
Well, but here's the interesting thing about it. It is not official church doctrine. In terms of, has the First Presidency at some point said this is official church doctrine? No. It was Wilford Woodruff had this revelation, and I think he was in England when he had it. And he wrote down, he says, the thought, and he knew it was from God. He went and told Brigham Young. Brigham Young says, Brother Woodruff, that is true. He went and told Joseph Smith. Joseph Smith said, that is true. And Joseph Smith taught that in the King Follett, like a day later, taught it. Now, there are doctrines in the church which we teach, and there are doctrines which change too, that are not necessarily official doctrines. But so what? To me, that is the foundation of my belief. And as I pray and I ponder, and at my age, I now have what I never had before, I have time. So I spend sometimes hours, I'll spend in a day walking and talking with God and asking questions and searching. And our faith, how do I put this? We drink downstream. That's our problem. If my faith was dependent on only what I learned in Sunday school and in sacrament meeting talks, I would be quite a different person. I have always believed that we drink upstream. Drinking upstream is the source.
What does that mean?
It means God, and the closer we get to God is the scriptures. And I look at the scriptures and I read them. I read the Book of Mormon every year, just from cover to cover, and then I study it, subjects, but I read it. The desire of my heart is to know God. When I'm praying, I say, God, who are you? Show yourself to me. And I'll say, Heavenly Mother, who are you? I want to know you. And I believe that the spirits are right here with us. I believe the spirit world is here. That's been taught. I don't know if that's official doctrine, but it's certainly been taught by the brethren. And when my dad died or my mother died, sometimes, don't say, here's what we get up. We get hung up on terms. Oh, you're praying to Heavenly Mother? No, I'm not praying to Heavenly Mother, but I said, Heavenly Mother, I want to know you. I want to know you.
You're speaking to her.
I'm speaking to her. And my mother, say I pray to my mother? No, but Mom, one time I was walking and I said, Mom, I want to apologize. You gave me so much. In your later years, all you wanted me to do was accompany you so you could sing. And I was too busy for you. Mom, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And so I'll have these conversations. And my knowledge, my testimony of the gospel comes, I call it drinking upstream. Because I hear a lot of things it's cultural. It is a viewpoint, people looking at the gospel from the cultural standpoint, and for me it's not helpful. And my every Sunday I pray, God, help me not to be judgmental at what's said, and what I hear. Open my heart so that I can be supportive of other people in their journey. Because there's people there in the church who've been in it a year, there's people who have been out of it their whole life that are in it. You have this huge, the gospel net brings all these people in. And my journey is my journey, and God has lengthened the days of my probation so that I'm 74, and I still have energy, and I'm still going. And so I am now learning. I'm figuring things out that I didn't know before.
Where are the brethren in the stream? Are they upstream or downstream? Like
So
Joseph Fielding Smith, Bruce R. McConkie, like.
Well, you mean the current brethren or general authorities in general? Or what are you asking?
I mean, so you talked about when you broke your leg, you read all those books, Talmage and Woodstow, and you went on to read Joseph Fielding Smith and Bruce R. McConkie. You can't even buy a copy of Mormon Doctrine anymore because that's been mothballed.
Well, it's been changed. There's been stuff that's changed. Is it
It's been mothballed. Yeah, it's out of print.
Oh, well.
Joseph Fielding Smith stuff's out of print, out of fashion. my point with Gordon B. Hinckley was, we got so much backlash from evangelical Christianity that we backed off of that doctrine that man can become gods. You won't read much of that in the current curriculum. And, I'm not trying to change or even mess with beliefs, other than to note that a lot of the theology and doctrine that informs Saturday's Warrior, and that seems to be solidified in your beautiful religious worldview, the church seems to be sort of distancing itself from, or sort of
I don't
downplaying. Right?
I don't think that. I'll tell you, when I went on mission, we were there to proselyte. Dang, I wiped my feet off.
You dusted your feet.
Yeah, but that was my view at the time. And when I was a child, I spoke as a child. And as a man, I speak as a man. And as an older man, I'm really excited to what I can learn, because when I learn something, I'll put it down. I'll put it away. I got something better now. And Joseph Smith did that. He once he learned something, this 14-year-old boy, he had no idea what he was getting into. Lehi had no idea what he was getting into. If Lehi knew what he was getting into, he would have gotten the gold plates from the get-go. He would have gotten Ishmael's daughters from the get-go, got a couple of them with steel bows, something to break, and had a course in shipbuilding. He didn't know where he was going. I don't think that Nephi, when he starts out in the Book of Mormon, he understands what the fullness of the gospel. He may not have even understood the Godhead. And so I see the church as this living, growing thing. And sometimes we get in the way of it. We want orthodoxy. We want to codify it and to prove that it's perfect, because it doesn't change. Well, it does change. It does change. Our doctrine changes and it grows, and it should. And there's many great and beautiful things pertaining to the kingdom of God that will yet be revealed. I want to know those. Now, do I have any issues? I have had personal issues. I have had some discussions that would really surprise you with members of the 12 over not religious things, but what I thought were very, very serious issues. And I'll just bring up one, because when I was involved in the LDS marketing through Embryo Music, I continually did battle with Deseret Book, and which I felt was a monopoly. And so one time, some friends of mine that owned a bookstore in Idaho, they came to me and they knew that I was outspoken and I would not afraid to, whatever. And they said, "We don't know what to do. Deseret Book is moving into our town, opening up a bookstore across the street. We'll be out of business. We can't sell it. I got 2 kids on a mission." And that had come as an end of a lot of problems of the church being in business. And I had actually worked for Bonneville. I was acquainted with the problems that arise when the church gets in business. And so after complaining, I was led to a general authority who was head of the whole thing. He's now passed away. And we had this conversation, and I was complaining. I said, it's a monopoly. It's not fair to other members of the church to put them out of business. It's a game of telestial pursuit where one wins and another loses, and you shouldn't be playing that game. Your game is celestial pursuit, where everybody wins. Everybody goes to heaven. That's the game. And he says, and we were talking. He says, "Oh, you mean the competition is too much for you?" And he's talking to the bookstore, and I was complaining about why are my records marketed spine out and Deseret Book are face out, And he says, "Well, if the fire's too heat, get out of the fire." And I said, "Elder," and he says. Oh, and he says, "Are you saying that we don't need church? You mean we don't need the Deseret News, and we don't, I said, "Elder, blah, blah, blah. This may come as a surprise to you, but I have raised 9 children in Los Angeles without the Deseret News. How could I possibly do that?" And then he said, "Well, he was talking about competition. He says, the competition is too hot. If you can't stand the heat, get out of the fire." And I said, "Right now, you are not Elder Jones to me. You are Mr. Jones. You are not speaking in your role as a general authority. You are speaking in your role as a man." And I said, "In my experience in the church, I've served as a bishop twice, and I've served in high council. I've taught early morning seminary, and I've had many of the callings of the church." I said, "I have never had anything but beautiful experiences through the priesthood correlation program. But these experiences are wrong and hurtful." So I called Elder Oaks. And I love Elder Oaks. I know people, he's strong, you know, he's obviously a lawyer. And his daughter's a very good friend. And I said, Elder Oaks, I just got to vent. I said, this is just wrong. This competitive thing with church businesses against, remember, you know, really, does Bonneville really need to build a recording studio? You know, there's more recording studios in Salt Lake than any other city in the world. And you're putting others out of business. And so he said, I remember his words, and he says, Lex, we are not all, we do not think the same. He's talking to the 12. We think differently.
Meaning the Quorum of the 12.
Yeah, we have different opinions. And the older guard comes going back from Brigham Young, where Brigham Young was a monopolist. You know, I mean, he started businesses and he controlled them and he profited from them. And he says, my heart is with you and I agree with you. He says, but like the iceberg, sometimes our movements seem imperceptible. I said, thank you, Elder Oaks. That means so much to me. Because I didn't hear it from the other person. Now, we're talking about general authorities. I have never, maybe it's because of my father dying, I never worshipped, looked up to any man in my life. Closest was President Kimball. I love President Kimball. I was a bishop, and I loved his suffering. I loved his kindness. But I am not the kind where a general authority walks in the room and says, oh, you know, we're human beings. We're all just human beings. There's only one, and that's Christ. All others fall short. But do I sustain them in their calling? Yes. Do I sustain them? And I love the conference talks. Do I agree with everything? Is everything there for me? No. There's some things I hear at times that I say, interesting. But I go on because my faith isn't rooted in that. My faith is rooted in a personal testimony, revelation. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So it doesn't matter. I have 6 members of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if this church, people leave the church en masse and we're down to a small group, a band of Christians, 300 people. It doesn't matter to me. I shouldn't say it doesn't matter, but you know what I mean? That's not where my faith, that the church has to grow. It has to be bigger. No, that's not where it's at. When I was called, interesting thing, I was shortly after Saturday's Warrior, I was called to be bishop. No one was more shocked than I had it not been for one experience. Here I am working in Hollywood, you know, in rock, still working in Hollywood and still doing a lot of stuff, arranging for other people. I did not, bishops were accountants, insurance, some dentists, a few doctors, but you know, that's what bishops were.
Lawyers.
Yeah, lawyers. And so we have a new bishop. We move into the Studio City ward. We have a new bishop. And we're sitting in church with a family. Bishop is sustained. And as clear as can be, the thought comes to me, Bishop Wood is going to die, and you're going to be the next bishop. And I go, okay, where did that come from? Was that Satan or what? You know, where did that come from? Is that some deep down sense of vanity and pride that I want to be bishop, or what was that? But it was so startling. 6 months later, Bishop Wood died, and the stake president called me in, and I was weeping, because I knew what was going on, and he said, the Lord has released Bishop Wood and has called you to be bishop. And I couldn't say anything. He says, you know, don't you? I said, yeah, I do. Those are the kind of things, John, that I've had in my life, and more, that are stronger than secular knowledge. Secular knowledge, I've also learned that enough facts can be assembled to present any side of any opinion. That's why we have liberals and conservatives. I listened to 7 hours of Senate testimony on climate change. And how can so many people see the same facts so differently? Facts prove everything and nothing. Not that they're not valuable. Did I stop this conversation?
No, this is great. There's some listeners who are saying they want me to challenge you or push back. That's not what I do on Mormon Stories, but I will have some follow-ups to the things you're talking about.
Challenge my pushback on what?
I mean, they're just like, people just always want to see kind of
What am I pushing back on?
No. They're asking me to push back on you.
Oh,
and that's
go
not,
ahead. Go ahead.
No. Well, we're about to break for lunch.
Okay.
And I love listening to the way you've responded. We were going through some of the song titles, and it was really fun to see that come from Sailing On, because that was a kind of a launching pad into your core theology and your views on the church. And I'm just going to say we're going to circle back to that.
Okay.
But it was magical for me, so thank you for that. I'm just list a couple more songs really quick. So Zero Population. What comes to your mind when I mention that song?
Well, it's not a great song. Okay, it's a little complex. The rhythms.
It's about abortion. It's about birth control.
Do you know the book? Did you ever see the book? The book called The Population Bomb was written by a Stanford professor.
Malthus. Was it Malthus?
No. And he's still spewing off too. I mean, the book says by 1985 there'll be mass starvation in San Francisco. It goes on and on, all of these things, and I'm kind of reminded. I think social scientists in 1990 would have said the biggest problem is that by year 2000 you'll be up to your knees in horse manure in the streets. You know what I mean? Technology marches forward and does amazing things. But so the book though was pretty widely viewed, widely read, and very influential in proving to the world that it's overpopulated. And so that came to, now here's a doctrine that, it wasn't a doctrine, large families, okay? What is that? There was a time, I remember being taught that we had a responsibility to bring people into our families or they'd be sent to another. So I don't know where that is today because people are having smaller and smaller families for economic reasons. So it was the powerful number in the show. I can look at it dramatically. It was the what's the word? It was the threat,
Yeah.
to the family and to the believers.
But it also became, and maybe it was already such, but it became sort of the threat that Mormons perceived coming from the world that they wanted to set themselves apart from.
Yes.
Right?
And
drugs, sex, underpopulation, having too few kids, science, skepticism of modernity, right?
I felt that strongly in the 70s. I felt that we were at war with the world. I felt that very strongly, and I needed to protect my family and my children. I needed to make sure that they got it straight, figured it out, and I felt that very strongly.
Okay.
The world was not a safe place. By the way, I don't feel that.
Yeah, that's what we'll talk to after lunch. Line Upon Line. Anything come to your mind with that song?
I think it is I love the concept. The concept, from the scriptures. It's line upon line, precept on precept. That's how he teaches us. That's how he lifts his children. And that to me is a truism. We all grow grace for grace. We learn here a little, there a little. And our life is a process of learning if we'll allow that to happen and seek it.
What's Paper Dreams about?
Paper Dream is about, it's so funny, I'm so critical of, I want everything.
You don't like Paper Dream?
No, I'm not saying I don't like it. I'm just saying, when we talk about these songs, the first thing to my mind is, it's not good enough, or it's this, that,
Is that the artist in you then?
I don't know what it is, but it's just, I can always do better. And that's what keeps me going. So Paper Dream, I really liked it in the new one, much better than the old one. At least the musical arrangement of it. And now you know who Todd is in this one. You get an idea who this character is.
What's the song about?
It's a song about searching. It's a song about searching for who you are and searching for life. And the guy thinks he's a failure, and he wants to be somebody important, and he's not. And I think it's kind of universal. I think there's a lot of people in the world today that feel that they're insignificant and want to be important or significance.
All right, last one. Brace me up.
That one worked well for me in the show. Worked really well. It was born out of the part of the original theme. Part of the music in there comes out of the original theme of Saturday's Warrior. I thought, I didn't like the word brace me up. so much. I didn't think that was, I would like to have had a phrase that was more normal language, everyday language. It seemed a little poetic at that moment for a guy that's sinking, you know. But I thought the song worked really well. And to me, it's one of those powerful moments in the show.
Are any of these characters biographical? You've touched on this, but...
Well, in the film, I kind of draw on my family's experience, the King family, and it could be the Osmonds, it could be any of these families. And in Jimmy is slightly biographical.
You're Jimmy, a little bit?
Mm-hmm. I feel that I would have liked to have been, in a way, I'd like to have been Jimmy, I'd like to have been a rock star, but the price is too high. I wasn't willing to pay that.
Okay, so when Mac's crowd are singing Jim, you know,
yeah, there is no Mac's
hey
crowd.
Flinders, no
Yeah.
Flinders. That's Columbia.
Mac is in Jimmy's band now,
Right.
in the movie. Mac
Oh, okay,
is in
okay.
Jimmy's band.
But when all the girls and Mac are singing "Hey Flinders, no Flinders," that's Capitol Records basically tempting you to kind of live that worldly life a little bit.
Well, I hadn't
right?
thought of it that way. I hadn't thought of that. I mean, it just represented the pull from our culture. There's a Latter-day Saints, and here's a culture in World War.
Yeah.
And they're trying to pull us away, trying to pull us down.
All right, so Jimmy is a little bit autobiographical.
Yeah, mostly the culture he came out by putting him in the record business. I put him in the record business.
In the movie.
Yeah, so that's autobiographical.
Is Pam in any way biographical?
Pam is kind of a Christ figure. No, I don't. Nobody that I know, you know, she's kind of a Christ figure, and I
She
think
dies so that Jimmy can have his
brings him
awakening.
back. Yeah, and I think she's a hero. You know, I have a granddaughter that has spina bifida and cerebral palsy, and she is kind of a hero for me. And every time if somebody or my kids start thinking that their life is hard, you know, she's in a wheelchair. She'll be in a wheelchair her whole life. And she's had over a dozen serious surgeries. And I think Pam makes us present how blessed, how good we've got it.
She calls us to goodness too, though, right?
Yeah.
That's probably my favorite moment in the musical is line upon line when Jimmy and Pam are looking up at the stars. And
I'm surprised that you like Saturday's Warrior. I would think that you wouldn't like
I
Saturday's
can
Warrior.
sing every single song. I'm surprised you don't like Saturday's Warrior. Line upon line.
Well, when you
What does she say? Consider the stars, Jimmy. What does she say?
consider the stars. They're talking about how they come out one at a time, and just because you can't see them all, you know, it's like, don't throw it away. And I think that about faith, and our faith is that way. Sometimes, because we can't get it, we can't see the whole picture, we can't understand something, there's a tendency to throw it away. But faith is believing that that will reveal itself in time. That's the essence of faith. So many things we don't know. And the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know. But I've adopted never let what I don't know destroy that which I do know.
Thank you for joining us today on Mormon Stories. If you enjoyed this episode, please help us make more like it by becoming a monthly subscriber at mormonstories.org. Thank you very much.